So welcome everyone today. This is Mary Shika from Iowa Mentor. And we're going to talk about this back to school time at this time in where we are with COVID and being off school for a lot of last year and just a lot of things going on. Just wanted to, talk about where we are at this time. So we're going to talk about meeting young people where they are right now, relationship-centered schools, and SEL. And hopefully there's some information perhaps you would choose to share with mentors or even with the school personnel too, to see where they are with looking at relationship-centered schools and understanding how mentoring helps meet SEL needs too. And to position yourself as leading these efforts and that you are providing some of these services already for young people in the school. So let's do some introductions. And I will just go down the participant list. And if you would please introduce yourself and your organization that you're representing. And I'll go back to that first slide so we can see what we're going to share. What needs you're seeing or you're thinking about that young people have as they're going back to school this fall. So Tony, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. And I'll put my camera on, I think. Yes. Hi, I am Tony Lampley. I am the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Program Officer with Iowa Mentor. So it's a pleasure to have you guys here today. And I do have 3 children going back to school. So I am always very interested in knowing about SEL and what we can do to make our schools stronger and better for our young people. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Lynn, you came up somehow up top, so alphabetically not. You're there. So Lynn, Carol.
Yes, I just had to find the unmute button on this one. I was just on Zoom earlier. I got that one figured out. Lynn Carroll, Heart of Iowa Big Brothers Big Sisters in Marshalltown. One of the things we have going on right now has to do with some mental health. We are working with our with one of the school counselors who is bringing together our 5th and 6th graders who are heading back to school. For the incoming 5th graders, it will be a transition to a new building for them. Doing some basics about, talking about how they're feeling with that, anxiety they might have over things, and identifying and being able to voice that with some support from her. The beauty of all that is she's a very loving, compassionate personality who will see them at the school among the 700 kids. She will still see those kids and they will have someone they feel comfortable enough going to talk to. So that's one thing we've got going this month on Thursday nights. Another thing is we're anticipating being back in person. We've heard from the school district that we can actually go back into the buildings for mentoring, which is fabulous because that personal face-to-face mentoring has a fabulous impact on kids that you cannot quite get via Zoom, even though I love these kind of opportunities that saves a lot of travel time. So, but as far as really building those relationships with their mentors, the face-to-face is ideal. Yeah, we're hopping around here. And what else did you want to know, Mary?
No, that is great, Lynn. Thanks.
Okay, good.
Yeah, great addressing that transition year there. Those are always tricky years. And yay for school counselors, yay. And yay for you guys being back in the school. That's awesome. So thanks.
Yeah, and we are actually meeting with our school counselors and social workers tomorrow. They're coming to our building. We are just going to sit down and talk about, if there's been any changes as far as our referral system and how it is we're going to go about connecting with kids and any new updates that we share with them at the beginning of the school year. And it's great because they're out of their building and we bring in the treats and it's all good.
Great. All right. Thanks so much. Andrea.
I'm going to put on my camera. Hi, I'm Andrea Ross with New Opportunities Mentoring out of Sac County. we're really just looking forward to being able to get back into doing our school base and getting kids excited about doing it again, but still running with people and things with apprehensions about the new variant and everything and mask mandates. So we're still running into that, but everything other than that, yeah, getting excited to get back there in school systems, hopefully.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Mary Bridget?
Hi, everyone. So I guess when I think of the needs of young people going back to school, I think we're talking a lot about, some of the very similar things people have already mentioned, but SEL, brain health concerns, really making that connection back with staff and peers. And we unfortunately are not able to bring our mentors in right away from the beginning of the school year, so we will be having to pause a little bit here in Dubuque. But we are still going to be doing some onboarding of mentors with the anticipation of getting them into our schools this fall sometime. But I actually really liked how Mary spoke of it earlier on, just really using mentors as another connection for students, another safe caring adult, another person that is part of this whole child academic picture. That's what we're trying to get at with our mentoring program, and really connect those mentors as part of our multi-tiered system of support, and providing mentors as sort of an intervention for kids that may need another, again, safe caring adult. So I'm hopeful that this fall we'll be able to have a more kind of normal, I guess I don't even know what normal is anymore, but idea of what that will look like for a mentoring program. But just trying to move forward, trying to be cognizant of where so many kids are at with their home life and what they're bringing with us into our buildings starting soon. So our counselors don't start until tomorrow, I guess. So I've only been here back in the office for a few days as well, but looking forward to just getting sort of our teams together and really looking at those students and what supports they may need this year, mentoring being one of them. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Mary Bridget, what is your exact role, your title there at Dubuque Schools?
Yeah, so my exact title is Student Services Facilitator. So I work very closely with the Executive Director of Student Services, who's Shirley Horseman. And then, I also have different roles here. So I work with the mentoring program, our McKinney-Vento students identified as homeless, as well as our all of our attendance initiatives, really looking at those students and families and how we connect them to resources, trying to get them into our buildings more consistently. So work with school counselors, some other staff members, life coaches, connectors, liaisons in our elementary and middle and high schools.
Thanks for explaining that. And I really I wanted you to talk about your broader role a little bit, because just because you are in the school and kind of in the insider role in some of the community-based organizations, to understand like that, that maybe you could offer some insight to like how they can position themselves as mentoring as part of all of those student support services too. So if you're looking for, contacted schools or to put your work into context, that Mary Bridget might be an excellent resource. So thanks. See, I just set you up. What's your role? Oh, see?
But the way that we're talking about it is absolutely the right way to be talking about it. It's just an intervention to be put in place for students that need another connection, another caring adult that's going to be there for them, and just trying to blend everything together so it's not so disconjointed. And that's all of our goals anyway, is to make it what's best for kids. So as much as we can be doing that in partnership is going to be what's best for everyone involved, especially kids.
Yeah, great, thank you. Kristen.
Hello, Kristen with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Johnson County. Looking forward to getting back into the schools as of now, hoping that those things don't change. We just got word last week. Then there was some posting about no volunteers, but I can't remember the terminology that they said, but with our partnership, they're allowing us and our mentors in. So that is great to hear, and we're excited about that. We've been doing some different things. We have an event this evening. We're giving away some backpacks that we've got filled with school supplies, working a little bit with ACT like we've done previously, but a little bit different look this year. and trying to get some kids some school supplies and whatnot. So yeah, just getting excited and hopefully getting things underway and having a good year ahead of us. So
Great, thanks, Kristen. It's challenging working with several districts, which I know you all do too, and how having different regulations and standards for you. So, Felicia.
Hi everyone, Felicia Watkins with YSS Mentoring. We serve Boone and Story counties. We are in 9 school districts, and I've heard back from about half of those that they do plan to allow volunteers in the building, so that's a good thing. But as we know, COVID kind of shifts every day, so I'm hoping we still have that opportunity to bring mentors in. Needs of the mentees going back, pretty much what's already been mentioned. Mental health is kind of high on our priority right now, just because we had a lot of issues with kids and talking about suicide, really young kids last school year. So our program's going to focus on the mental health aspect and hopefully getting back to face-to-face, because that's what the kids need and want.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Felicia. Jessica Davenport.
Hi, I'm Jessica with New Opportunities Mentoring also. So I guess something that, just kind of thinking about the needs of the kids when going back to school. I mean, it was kind of mentioned before. I know Tony mentioned, the social emotional learning. So that's definitely something that can be helpful with our program. And another thing is, I know with the school district that I work with the mentoring, the school-based mentoring at least, they did not have it last year due to COVID. So it's hopefully going to get up and rolling again this year. I guess it'll just kind of depend on what the school is going to allow. And we have peer-to-peer mentoring with our school-based here at this particular district. So I'm hoping maybe they will allow it. I know they weren't even letting kids from other schools go into other schools within the district last year, just because of the spread and trying to prevent that. So I haven't heard back anything yet, but hopefully we'll get things up and rolling. But yeah, that's definitely something that the social emotional is really huge. And then also just having social communication in general, just because with everyone not being in school as much last year, they just didn't get as much of the socialization. So hopefully that's something that we can work on getting up and rolling this year.
Yeah, definitely. That's huge when they miss so much of that, like you said. Yeah. Jessica Prazak.
Hello, this is Jessica Prazak. I do coordinate the one-on-one mentoring program in Sarah Grove County. Kind of along the same lines with the youth mental health. Our agency actually has a program where we have 2 staff that are certified youth mental health first aid trainers, and they are doing training the whole district, Mason City School District, next week. So since we're kind of the agency in charge, we put together little mentoring packets with like referral information, our brochures, our contact info, and then also since we always have a waiting list, usually of kids, we did more like mentor recruitment, just saying like, we know there's a need, but we need mentors. So if they have friends, family members, acquaintances that they think would be a good mentor to contact us. So hopefully we get something out of that. I believe there's 250 getting trained next week. So
Wow, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah, and what a great example of putting yourselves out there that like we're the experts in this area. Let us help support mental health needs. So that's great. John Preston.
Took me just a sec to navigate to the mic there. Hey everybody, John Preston. I am with Community Youth Concepts in Des Moines, and we do a career-based mentoring program for middle school of young people going back to school this fall. I mean, I think it's really the same stuff as normal, but just magnified. A lot of parents that we talk to are just saying like, hey, their kids are really looking for somebody to connect with, just somebody who's we offer group and one-on-one, but I'm primarily focused on one-on-one mentoring. So a lot of the parents that are reaching out right now are just saying like, they just noticed, especially with like mental health concerns right now, just having that extra person who's willing to connect with them there. And I think especially going back to school, so many kids are out of school. So I think the kids that are going back to in-person are just really needing and looking forward to just having more of that human contact and that. So yeah, looking forward to just getting more kids connected and supported.
Thanks, John. And Katie?
I'm assuming me, but I'm Katie Zick. I work for the Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Mississippi Valley, and I oversee our elementary programming. Right now, we're not 100% sure what schools are allowing us back in, volunteers back in, that sort of thing. We serve both the Iowa and Illinois side of the Quad Cities, so obviously, Illinois is very different from Iowa with how they're handling COVID. So we'll just kind of have to see and figure out. But I think if we can get back in the schools, that's probably what we're most looking forward to for kind of what everyone said, like the face-to-face interaction and like getting kids back to meeting with their mentors, since most of our school program has been meeting virtually or through text or phone call and stuff. So hoping to get back into schools and get more information as they start this month. So.
And thanks, Katie. And not only in many school districts, but across state boundaries as well in 2 states. Tramika? You're on mute if you're trying to talk. I don't know if your microphone is available to you today. Okay, well, we can't hear you, but you can always put something in chat, and thanks for joining us today. So yeah, thanks for sharing all of that, and kind of just to summarize and maybe some other things for you to think about too. We know, as a lot of you mentioned, the opening of the school year again can generate some confusion thanks to intensifying COVID Delta variants and mixed messaging, unmasking, communities divided on best path forward. And we know this confusion can lead to anxiety, which is why as kids head back to school, we as adults need to recognize and understand what they might be going through. We know that they're experiencing, as you said, children learn what they live. They're experiencing some of the same mental health impacts as adults. We're only beginning to understand and measure the impact on school-age children and to better understand what those impacts really are and how this is going to affect kids going forward. Kids sense and internalize emotions of their families, and we know families have been through a lot of changes and trauma throughout the pandemic as well. Last fall, I know some of you mentioned, I think Felicia mentioned that a rise in suicide attempts. Last fall, the CDC reported the proportion of emergency room visits related to mental health had spiked 24% among kids ages 5 to 11. And for 12 to 17-year-olds, it jumped 31%. So we know that the American Psychiatric Association found that more than half of parents of school-age children were concerned about the mental health of their children. So just reinforcing some of the things that you have shared. So returning to school as COVID cases increases and guidelines change, parents and guardians should be prepared for a roller coaster of emotions and coping mechanisms, as well as, you know, their mentors thinking about this as well. I'm just to make a shared, looking forward to kids getting back to their mentoring relationships in person. Thanks. And now we can unmute. So feel free to share at any time, jump in. Thanks. So I'm going to share some information that comes from Dr. Eloise Weeks, I have her name on the last slide of this section. She's a psychiatrist and director of behavioral health with Blue Cross Blue Shield in Kentucky. And I just seen something she'd written recently, and I really liked the way she framed this, understanding the unique pressures on children and teens. And I think these would be some good, this is some good information to share with your mentors. And I will send slides out afterwards too. You can feel free to use any of this information. So, you know, quarantine, online school, and months of the social distancing, we knew that was a recipe for isolation, even this not being able to see mentors in person for quite some time. Prolonged feelings of detachment can impact development and can manifest as depression, anxiety, acting out, or withdrawal. So engaging in those conversations with young people, and there's some tips there. Don't make assumptions because we don't see major behavior changes, that we make assumptions that everything's okay. So just offering that, a mentor can offer that opportunity to talk about it and share feelings and dig deeper. And once they've shared them, validate that their feelings are okay. So trying to actively engage the children and teens to detect their problems and help them to name them is just very important for them to have an outlet like that. The mentor can serve that role. And of course, watching for nonverbal signals. I mean, children speak with their actions as well. We know that. So they might not be able to verbalize them, but they may complain of some physical ailments as well, and may act out more, may resist going to school. Those are just some changes that you probably have seen maybe in your own children, or that you've seen mentors have been relating to as well. And just approaching the changes with understanding and patience, and then getting to like what's really going on too. And the other thing to share as well is that as a mentor, they can model the positive social behavior. Even if your child has no trouble, or your mentee has no trouble returning to school, they are likely heading into an environment where peers and others have different opinions. So just showing that we can coexist in spaces where we have different opinions on things, but we're going to follow regulations, and you're setting an example. The mentor can set that example too about cooperation and respect. So I think this could just be some helpful information to share again with mentors to show them the important role that they can play for their mentee in navigating some of these situations. So next we're going to talk a little bit about relationships matter. Imagine that. There's a big movement for relationship-centered schools, and Mentor National is really taking that up. So some of this work comes from Pamela Sivens, and she's been really leading this for Mentor, and there'll be more about that and more resources we can share with you about taking this information to schools, about relationship-centered schools. And that is really, it's really changing the dynamics of how a school is organized and how a school operates, which not, unless you're in the school, you don't necessarily have that impact, or that you can make those changes, but you could be at the table discussing them and the role that mentoring plays in that as well. So just starting with this thought, what would schools look like if the goal was to foster and strengthen supportive relationships for all students? That's what we're trying to get at. If our schools really are relationship centered, what would they look like? Just a hypothetical. So when we look at relationship centered schools, where all students would experience high quality, intentional, critically conscious, culturally responsive, healing informed relationships. And if you see all of the circles in the outline, all of the components that would make this up, starting right at the top, strengthening and scaling existing school-based mentoring services right there. And I think going from the right there, a lot of these are related to mentoring as well. More opportunities for youth to build relationships, and there's measuring and tracking those relationships, reviewing policies to ensure supportive relationships. So I mean, mentoring just really could be at the core a lot of these key components about creating relationship-centered schools. This four-dimensional framework for measuring student social capital. Social capital is something you hear about a lot lately, and we've been talking about that in our workplace learning, based mentoring as well with young people. Social capital refers to the intangible resources embedded within interpersonal relationships or social institutions. So in the context of education, we see social capital in the forms of parental expectations, obligations, and the social networks. That's what we're trying to build for these young people. And it will include the quantity and the quality of relationships, as well as them to mobilize those relationships and a structure of networks. And our mentors can do all of these things. And that doesn't mean it's the only person that can do all of these things, but a mentor can help support all of these components of creating social capital for a young person, which is key to a young person being successful in school and beyond. And one other thing you've probably seen before too, and just a reminder, and sometimes this is easier maybe for mentors to digest too, is from the Search Institute and their developmental relationships. And based on the developmental relationships is based on an adult expressing care, providing support, challenging growth, sharing power, and expanding possibilities. And I just encourage you, if you haven't looked at this before, I know we've done trainings on this in depth before, but Search Institute actually has a nice chart that kind of breaks that down, and that's a nice resource to share with mentors as well, just so they see their role in this with young people. So the other area I want to talk about a little bit too was social emotional learning and mentoring role in social emotional learning. So we hear a lot about this day. So here's one definition of that, which I won't read to you. But I think it's important if we think about mentoring's role in social emotional learning, and we're going to say we support that, how do we really measure that? There are so many components of this. So if we are going to measure one or a couple or a few, whatever, if we're going to say we support it in X way, then we need to make sure that we are measuring that so that we can really truly show that we are making a difference in different areas of social emotional learning. So I like this, showing that social emotional is progressive, integral to academic learning, cultural and contextual. It's about positive long-term outcomes. It's just as important for adults as for youth. Social emotional learning is not something that happens overnight. It's built slowly. We know that academic learning is relational. So we have to build that trust, and just we know that that's what happens in a mentoring relationship. They build that trust in the relationship so they can get to the next level of learning. This breaks down some social emotional components of social emotional learning. And I don't think there's one of those that you wouldn't say would be part of a mentoring relationship. And this slide just explains a little bit more about what those different components are and what they would look like. Again, if we're going to say that we support this social emotional learning in our mentoring relationships and our mentoring program, then we should be ready to back that up and be measuring that and showing that we are making a difference in those areas. So this is specifically about using a SEL curriculum. There are a myriad of them out there. And it's natural for a group mentoring program that you might use some SEL curriculum. That makes sense. In one-to-one matches, actually using a curriculum comes with some caution, but it can be done that it is a piece of that. You build that relationship, but you could have a piece of that too if there were certain skills that you're trying to teach, and it could be even certain quote unquote lessons that you're trying to cover in that one-to-one relationship. But they do have some cautions there in using them one-to-one relationships. So a little bit more about where mentoring fits in here. Obviously in SEL, relationships are the foundation. And we know that mentoring can improve outcomes in all of those areas. And I will say it again, we're going to say we make a difference in those areas, then we need to make sure we're measuring and demonstrating that. And we're never making the claim that mentoring is the only thing that contributes to any of these areas either. Like mentoring is not, it's a powerful, powerful thing. It has powerful outcomes, but it's not the magic bullet or the magic wand that just creates all these amazing outcomes up in and of itself. So how do we foster caring relationships? I think it just reminds us that these are some of the foundations for the work that we do in mentoring relationships too, that should be founded in trauma-informed work and looking at equity and identity development and restorative practices for that would help address some of those issues of trauma. Again, I think this is important to educate your school partners too, that you are offering this support for the young people that are showing up every day at their school door to learn. So just some information again about how SEL melds with a mentoring program. You're modeling the behavior. I like that. It's not about you, but it does start with you modeling it. Empathy being a cornerstone of SEL. Active listening, storytelling. I mean, these are things that when we're doing mentor training that we are, you're training your mentors on. So just recognizing that you're doing a lot of things, whether you've been calling them SEL or not. A couple other strategies that perhaps you haven't thought about that would enhance SEL would be some service learning, metacognitive journaling, which is thinking about thinking and students writing about that, and role-playing situations, which is something maybe you do use too, or could include or encourage your mentors to do when they're trying to do some problem solving with their mentee in a relationship. I did not make up that service learning just because we're Volunteer Iowa, but that is going to continue to be, we're really trying to strengthen that area across the state too, to have meaningful project-based learning that has a service component too, which is different than just simply volunteering, where students have a voice and decide about what a project they're going to be involved in. And this might just be a simple way to sum it up for mentors too, that reminding them that they are supporting young people in this way by putting the relationship first and modeling behaviors, just simply by creating that safe and caring space where they show up regularly and they know it's a safe place. The mentee knows it's a safe place for them, and empowering mentees to set their own goals as well. So I do have some resources here that'll be on the slide where the information came from, or some other toolkits, and where you can dig into some of this information deeper. Another resource that we'll be looking out for as well, Mentor, along with the America Student Assistant, is working on this education campaign to impact education systems, promoting mentoring mindset, a social capital. There will be some trainings available and other resources that would help you to make that connection with schools to position yourself as building these relationships for young people in their schools. So I'm going to pause for a minute if there are other thoughts or responses or information, questions that you'd like to ask or share anything with the group.
Mary, I wrote a not long ago. It was pre-COVID though, about some stuff with social emotional learning. And basically we purchased some card game kinds of things that we could put in the tubs in the schools. So once COVID came, we couldn't actually do that, but I have some of those if people are interested in looking at those over. I can put those in an email to you. You can send it out with this. a variety of different age groups and how maybe they can best be used. But, you know, something as simple as a conversation starter.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's many different kinds of opportunities out there for that. But one of them, like, what did you fail at today? And talk about that. Maybe another game, you know, some of those is like kind of a would you rather, and it kind of gives them the introduction to a topic that they can choose, but then help them to understand the, you know, to talk about the why they chose that one versus the other one. And that can just be the beginning of a different kind of conversation when they get together, instead of the, well, how was your day? You know, that kind of thing. What do you want to be when you grow up? Well, sometimes those are, we don't always tend to learn more. And they don't always learn more about themselves either when we use only those kinds of things. So there's several different things. I've got 5 games here that I can actually send the names to you, and you can just hand out with this if you're interested.
Yeah, great. Send that resource. That would be great.
Mary, one of the things that you talked quite a bit about was being able to measure how your program may support SEL needs. I think I'm summarizing that correctly, which I think is a great way to, I don't know if convince is the right word, but to convince that this does really work all together like that. So I guess I'm just wondering if you have any resources, and maybe there's things that you've provided today that I can go click in to say, you know, what are the best ways to show that in a program that the mentoring program is meeting some of these SEL needs, and we can show it by a pre and post survey of students. We can show it by, I don't know, you know, attendance data, or we can show it by number of suspension. You know, I mean, like, are there things like that that you already have or have seen in conjunction with SEL specifically that maybe you could share? Why don't you just put some in the chat there? But
yeah, well, no, I'm so glad you called me out on that, because I might have mentioned, you know, measurement a few times, and I neglected to mention the great toolkit that we have at the National Mentoring Resource Center. So they have a measurement toolkit, and they do have social emotional skills is one of the areas that have they have measurements in that area. And under that, they have self-control, social competence, problem solving, skills for setting and pursuing goals, perseverance, career exploration, youth-centered outcomes. However, there's areas of mental and emotional health, healthy and pro-social behaviors, interpersonal relationships. So I think even though they have social emotional skills, there are several other areas. So there are just tons of measurements in the toolkit. So it's just looking through those and see what, you know, really aligns with your program, because they're all, you know, they've been all vetted for, you know, they're valid and they're reliable, and, you know, statistics know way more than I do to create, you know, instead of going out and trying to create your own survey and making sure that you're really measuring what you think you're measuring. So I really recommend taking a look at that resource. Thanks for asking.
and I think, Mary, when you talked before about like what are schools looking for, like they're looking for data to show that they're moving in regards to any type of program or curriculum, whatever it may be that we're trying to implement to show that, you know, we can move the needle for some of these kids. So I think that's a huge point, and to be organized, not just come up with something in April, right, but to have something from the whole school year is really important. So.
Yeah, great. Any other questions or thoughts or comments? Feel free to put something in chat too if you're more comfortable doing that. I'm going to share just a couple other things that are upcoming, but again, feel free to, you know, raise your hand or put something in chat. We're still open to further discussion. Just want to remind you that Our fall training this year will be part of the Iowa Nonprofit Summit through Volunteer Iowa. The dates are there October 5th through 7th in the afternoons. It is a virtual event this year, and it is only $25. So hopefully that will make it more accessible for the group. It's still open to suggestions for topics that you'd like us to host or have someone present on. There are spaces in there for open space sessions. Again, when you're registering, you can say, I would like to lead a discussion about SEL. You can offer a session too. There are a couple spots for that. But if this confuses you about why it's part of Iowa Nonprofit Summit, like I'm not a nonprofit, but okay, so it is about it is about managing programs. It is about volunteer management, insert mentor management, because you all have a huge amount of volunteers as your mentors. So it's just, you can look through the topics, but there are a whole bunch of topics that really apply to the work that you do and some of the work and the connections with the community too. I'm really excited about some of the plenary sessions and the keynote speakers too. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and hopefully you can make some time for that professional development. And again, if you have some thoughts on topics you'd like us to cover or would like to host a session, and reach out to me if you're not sure, if you weren't part of our open space last year, if that seems really intimidating or scaring. It's not. You don't have to be the expert and leading a discussion. You can just host a space where it's something you'd like to share. Recruitment ideas is another thing that is always a hot topic too. And the other thing I'd like you to consider too is if you have a mayor that's supportive of mentoring in your community, to recognize them through Mentor National. They have had this campaign for several years, Mayors for Mentoring, and just trying to build this network of mayors across the country. And our goal in the state is to have 2 more mayors in Iowa recognized as Mayors for Mentoring. Right now we have 1. So if you know that your mayor is supportive, or you work with a mayor in your program, it's entirely your assessment and our assessment if they're a leader in this area. There's no specific criteria that they have to meet. So I just raised that up and hope that you would consider that and let me know if that's something that is applicable in your community. So questions about either of those items?
So how do they sign? How do we get our mayor to? Where do we go to get them signed up?
Yeah, Lynn, just message me and we'll get, there is a form there too. So if Marshalltown has a great leader in that area, we'd love to recognize him or her. Yeah,
yes,
great.
Actually, we do.
Good to know. And I did mention early on that we are going to be, there's a registration feature in Teams now. So you will be getting a link or whatever to register for these from now on. So it won't be just a calendar invite, and I think that's puts you a little bit more in control than me sending these invites. So we're very happy that Teams has come into the new age and now will allow us to register for these. So be looking for that. So does anybody else have anything for the good of the group?